call this meeting of the Legacy Finance Committee to order, and we do have a quorum. Our first order of business is approval of the minutes from March 12th, 2025. Representative Heinzman, have you reviewed the minutes? May I get a motion?
I would move the minutes, Madam Chair.
All right. All those in favor of approval of the minutes from March 12th, 2025, say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The minutes are approved. We'll just get started quickly. Our first bill today is House File 1679, Representative Lillie. Thank you for being here. This bill will be laid over. Representative Lillie moves that House File 1679 be laid over, and tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Good morning. I'm excited to be here. The bill before us today is about Minnesota Public Television, and through the years with the legacy funds, they've been good partners of the funds and recipients, and the efforts that they've made through the years have, I think, really been successful. And one of the things that I particularly like is the variety of programming that they're doing, but also that they help tell the story of other funds that are receiving our legacy funds all across the board. So today with me, I have folks with the MTV and Public TV, rather, and wrong one, and I'd like to pass it to them and have them tell you about it, but thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. I believe we have Les Heen from Minnesota Public Television. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Vang. My name is Les Heen, and I represent I'm with the Libby Law Office and representing the Minnesota Public Television Association. Now, the Minnesota Public Television Association is a group of 6 independent, nonprofit PBS stations, and we serve the entire state of Minnesota with a free over-the-air signal that reaches 98% of the state. And every year since legacy funding began in 2009, we have continued to produce content about the arts, history, and cultural heritage of Minnesota. And our audience is growing in great part because of streaming video. I can tell you that last year, for example, we had more than 2 million web views of the content that was produced with legacy funds. And we also estimate that more than 20% of Minnesota's classroom teachers use our public television station content in their classrooms. To tell you more about what we do, I have with me today Patty Mester, who is the general manager of one of those stations, the CEO of PBS North in Duluth, and she is also president of the Minnesota Public Television Association.
All right, Patty, please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Chair Vang and members, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today. For the record, my name is Patty Mester, and I represent Minnesota Public Television Association, or the MPTA. The MPTA includes 6 independent nonprofit PBS stations. We provided the committee a copy of our annual report. Among the highlights, the legacy funds included a production at PBS North, which is my station. We produced a documentary that has been aired in all 50 states and used by teachers across the nation. And while it was made for Minnesotans, it has interest for all Americans. This was among the 108 lesson plans our stations produced in the last year. Northern Nights, Starry Skies is the documentary that we created, and it's accompanied with lesson plans. We know that PBS is using our lesson plans as an example to show PBS stations across the nation on how it should be done. But today I will focus on our request for the coming biennium and the results of our recent Veterans History Initiative. The bill before you today requests $5 million for each year of the biennium, which is a 5% increase. This funding will allow us to continue building on the work that we've done to serve all of Minnesota, and we value Minnesotans equally, whether they live in rural areas or the metro, and that commitment is why all of our stations hold equal value. Our purpose is to rise to meet the arts, cultural, and heritage mission that this committee champions, making sure all voices, all stories, and all communities are represented and celebrated. As part of the legacy funding 2 years ago, stations have prepared 23 different segments about veterans in Minnesota. From a history that my station did about the Cold War in Duluth, to the story of a 102-year-old World War II veteran in western Minnesota, to the story of a young woman from southern Minnesota who served in Iraq. The response has been extraordinary. So for example, elements of the Duluth Cold War story became a viral sensation, generating more than 4 million views from around the world. While our focus is on Minnesotans, our authentic, compelling storytelling rises to the forefront, demonstrating its power to reach audiences far beyond our borders. The stories collected by stations will be available through exhibits at the new Minnesota Military Veterans Museum. Randall Dietrich, who is the executive chair of the museum, is putting our stories in that museum for history. Do you not have the?
Not with me, no.
Okay, my apologies. Okay, there we go. And the response to what we have done through our veterans coverage, as well as other documentaries that we've produced, I'm sorry, I had the wrong statement in front of me here, produced, has connected our communities in a way that media often cannot. But the impact of the work extends beyond viewership. Our vision doesn't stop here as we prepare for the nation's 250th anniversary in 2026. The Minnesota Public Television Association group will be working with filmmaker Ken Burns and sharing America's stories on a national scale. And Minnesota's story, its unique contributions, its heroes, its communities deserve to be part of that moment. And so with that, I would like to say, Chair Vang and members of the committee, the funding that we are asking for today is not an investment in us, and it's an investment through us. It's an investment that flows directly back to Minnesota communities through free, accessible content that connects classrooms, living rooms, and public spaces all across the state. For more than 50 years, we've been building trust and delivering quality programming that Minnesotans can rely on. And we're proud of that legacy, but we are even more excited about what the future holds. So thank you for your your past support and your ongoing support, and the opportunity to continue to serve the state that we all cherish. And I would be honored to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you. Questions from the committee? Representative Cha.
Thank you, Chair Vang. I don't have any questions, but just comments, because to emphasize the importance of PBS, as a new American growing up in the 80s, I actually learned more English from PBS than probably from my classes. It's because, I was glued onto the TV. And so programs like Sesame Street, Reading Rainbow, and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, right? Those are part of, I think, the makeup of who I am and who I am today. And so, I am in support, and thank you, Representative Lillie, for bringing us forward. And, let's continue to do that great work. Thank you.
Representative Lillie, would you like to respond, or any?
We have a video that we could show.
There, Madam Chair, there's a video that they'd like you to take a peek at, if that's possible. I don't know your time constraints, and
Yeah, we made sure that you guys have enough time, so feel free to share the video.
Well, we call it a short video, but we know short videos are like 30 seconds. This is roughly 3.5 minutes.
is
That should be okay. Yep.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Chair.
Yeah.
Is there something?
I have hers. More.
Legacy funding is making a positive impact across the state through its support of the Minnesota Public Television Association. The 6 member stations of the MPTA bring Minnesota's diverse stories to life, showcasing the state's rich arts, culture, history, and heritage. In just the past 2 years, MPTA stations shared more than 2,000 hours of newly produced legacy-funded programming, reaching millions on air, online, and in classrooms. This funding not only brings authentic, local stories to life, it also creates jobs, supporting nearly 30 full-time and 120 freelance jobs in the last year. With legacy funding, MPTA stations bring to life the vibrant stories of Minnesota's history. Pioneer PBS reintroduced viewers to the Wilmer women who made national headlines, fighting for equal rights in the workplace.
People gave up on us or failed us. We never gave up.
Feature documentaries about local trailblazers provide viewers a deeper understanding of Minnesota. With Order Up from Lakeland PBS, nostalgia is on the menu, giving audiences a tasty trip back to the era of the drive-in. Connecting viewers with their communities is central to MPTA's mission. Stories from KSMQ spotlight the Austin area's history of support for those in need. PBS North shares the best of Duluth and surrounding areas on Almanac North, fostering a deeper understanding of local arts, culture, and history. Minnesota's great outdoors shine in MPTA content. Programs encourage viewers to get out and experience the best the state has to offer. Special funding this year allowed us to share the experiences of veterans and immigrants. Lakeland PBS and Pioneer PBS brought veteran stories to life through firsthand accounts of service.
I lived this, I made it through it, and I'm happy that I made it. I want to show you that I'm happy to be alive and showing it.
Through this work and others still in production, we are able to bring Minnesotans closer to the stories of people in their communities. In Relish from Twin Cities PBS, viewers learn about global cuisines through the stories and food shared by our neighbors right here in Minnesota. Guests report an uptick in business after appearing on Relish, and viewers say the show encourages them to experience their community in a whole new way. Legacy funding enables partnerships with educators, creating lesson plans that extend Minnesota's history and culture into classrooms nationwide through PBS Learning Media. Prairie Public helps educators access high-quality resources about Indigenous cultures, helping build connections between students and their communities. Teachers praise this type of content, saying it fills a gap in available resources. Programs like Stage, Prairie Musicians, and Backroads showcase Minnesota's musical talent. These engaging performances make local music accessible to audiences of all ages.
Just another day with you.
Viewers get to know the people behind beautiful works of art in programs like Postcards, Prairie Mosaic, and Off 90. From music to the arts, viewers are not only entertained, they're motivated to attend local events and support local artists. Through online distribution, MPTA content reached over 3 million viewers worldwide in the last 2 years, resonating particularly with younger audiences through engaging series like Minnesota Historia and Mini Histories. These programs put a modern spin on historical narratives, ensuring Minnesota's past remains relevant today. From the state's past to its present, each story reminds us of the common threads that connect us. 6 stations, endless stories, our legacy.
All right. Thank you. That was a beautiful video. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just one other comment I wanted to make is that many of our productions have received Emmys. PBS North received 4 Emmys this year. And while we do not do it for the Emmys, we do know that it resonates with people. So thank you.
That's great. Congratulations on that. And Representative Lillie?
I don't know if he has a final.
Oh, okay. Representative
I'll
Schaaf.
just wrap up when he's done.
All right.
No, I forgot to mention this, but When my daughter was 7 years old, she did this beautiful painting, and I was like, how did you learn how to paint? And she said, oh, I've been watching these videos. And I said, who have you been watching? And she said, I've been watching Bob Ross. So I just want to share that with you. Thank you.
All right, we do have one more question from the committee. Co-Chair McDonald?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Lillie. Great shows indeed, a great production value as well from a photographer and videographer. Question is, do you use local videographers and video houses and production companies here in Minnesota?
President Patty?
Thank you, Chair Vang, and thank you for the question, Representative McDonald. Yes, we do. What we do is we ensure that all of the productions that we made are done by Minnesotans. The majority of it is done in-house, so it's from our staff. From time to time, we have to hire somebody who may have some expertise in whatever we're covering. So for example, the Cold War documentary that we did have to hire some outside help for that. But for the most part, everything is done in-house.
Co-Chair McDonald?
Thank you, Chair Vang. Very good to hear. I know that, some video production in Explore Minnesota, they went outside of Minnesota, production companies to do videos to Explore Minnesota. And I'm very delighted to hear, I'm sure we're all delighted to hear that most of all is Minnesota companies. I have a friend actually that is in the production movie industry, so that's good news. And then lastly, I was trying to go on YouTube to find out some of these videos because I can't watch them on TV all the time. So what site do people go to if they want to go to YouTube? I presume that's the channel in which you are able to show off some great stories.
President Patty?
Thank you, Chair Vang. Yes, Representative McDonald, you would have to go to YouTube for many of them. So for example, Minnesota Historia, I know that we put that up on YouTube. Oftentimes you have to go to the website of the different stations, or you might find some of it on Instagram, but I will get you that information as a follow-up.
Co-Chair McDonald?
Thank you, Chair Vang. Very good, thank you. And Representative Lillie, thanks for bringing such a great bill. Lucky to be one of the first presenters here for this bill, so good work.
Further questions? Closing remarks, Representative Lillie?
Thank you, Chair Vang and Chair McDonald. Thank you for hearing this today. They've really been good stewards of the legacy funds through the years, and one of the beauties of what I like about it is that they're statewide, and there's programming that they're doing in all these different stations all over the state. And it may have a different focus in greater Minnesota than it does in the metro, but the programming is really connecting, as we saw in the video, connecting all of us and telling stories. And when you get on there, you get really excited to see these videos and what people are doing in the arts, or like the baking one we saw today, and just different things that are, you might not know is going on in your community. But I think it really is going to help us as we move towards the end of Legacy 2 to help being able to renew. So hats off to this organization, because I think they're helping tell the story of other artists that are out there receiving legacy funds. And then I think it'll help us, when we get to renewal time. But anyways, thank you for your time, Chair Vang and Chair McDonald and members. And these folks are certainly available for further questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And with that, House File 1679 is laid over. Next we have is Representative Skraba for House File 1019. And then after that, we'll have House File 2321, Representative Frazier on deck. And Representative Skraba, your bill will be laid over. So Representative Skraba moves that House File 1019 will be laid over. And whenever you're ready, tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Chair Vang, and thank you, members. Being a member of the Legacy Committee for 2 years, I've watched different programmings, watched different things. I participated in the TV on my way down from Ely to the Capitol. I'll stop and do the political stuff with them. It's really fun, and the radio has probably a larger impact. It has a bigger audience, more people using it. So I look forward to the presentation of our members, our guests here. I'll let you guys go. Thank you, Chair.
All right, I believe we have Anissa Rognes, Director of Public Affairs. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Hi, my name is Anissa Rognes. I'm the Director of Public Affairs and Government Relations for Minnesota Public Radio.
All right, proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Vang and Chair McDonald. I am very happy to be here before this committee today in support of HF 1019, which is NPR's request for $4.7 million in legacy arts and cultural heritage funding. NPR is one of the nation's premier public radio organizations, producing programming for radio, digital, and live audiences. Minnesota Public Radio is actually the second largest public radio station in the country. We operate a statewide network with 45 stations that serve nearly all Minnesota with our 3 services, which are NPR News, Your Classical, and The Current, and we reach close to 1 million listeners each week. Minnesota Public Radio is a nonprofit public service organization. We exist to serve the public. Public media is the country's only local, free, commercial-free, nonprofit news and information service. We also provide access to music, arts, and cultural programming and community connection. Increasingly, we do this on multiple platforms: radio, broadcast, digital, streaming, and live. NPR's signal covers a little over 95% of Minnesota, with more than 80 stations and translators in total. NPR has about 500 employees in Minnesota. We have staff and reporters who live and work throughout the state. And besides the Twin Cities headquarters location, we have staff and reporters living and working in Bemidji, Duluth, Moorhead, Rochester, St. Cloud, and Worthington. Legacy funding has supported activities in locations all throughout Minnesota, as can be seen on the map that I'm showing now. Minnesota Public Radio meets the goals of the Minnesota Legacy Arts and Cultural Heritage Programming by preserving cultural history, providing live arts events, showcasing Minnesota artists, and expanding music education. One of our services is Your Classical, which is NPR's classical music service. And we partner around the state with various classical music communities, such as the Minnesota Orchestra and the Winona Beethoven Festival. Minnesota choral music is available 24/7 through the choral stream. And we have an event called Bring the Sing that brings communities together for public choral events. One of our signature programs with Your Classical is called Class Notes. And Class Notes is one of NPR's probably most popular legacy programs. It brings professional artists to schools for concerts and live performances. And they pair that with standards-based lesson planning. In FY24, we had 14 groups, 41 musicians in our stable of artists. And with that, we were able to reach over 53,000 students at 168 schools around the state. Roughly 20% of the concerts were in Greater Minnesota, and close to half of the students would qualify for free or reduced lunch if lunch wasn't already free. Here is a list of the cities and towns where Class Notes has had concerts. Let's see, hold on. It's coming. There we go. Increased legacy funding for FY26 and 27 will allow us to go deeper with our partnerships and music partners, have competitive compensation for our musicians and artists, and reach new audiences and do more Class Notes concerts. And to talk a little bit about Class Notes and the program in the schools, I brought Mrs. Hadley, Megan Hadley, along with me today. and she's going to tell you a little bit about the impact that's had in her classroom.
All right. Thank you, Megan, for being here. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
My name is Megan Hadley. So good morning, Chairs McDonald and Vang, and the members of the Legacy Finance Committee. My name is Megan Hadley, and I am here to speak on behalf of the support of HF 1019, the legacy funding for Minnesota Public Radio. I've been teaching K-5 elementary music at Oak Grove Elementary School in Bloomington for about 18 years. My school, Oak Grove, serves a large Title I population. We have autism and gifted and talented programs, and we have a very diverse language community. All of these students have a very special place in my general music classroom. I'm speaking on behalf of the NPR Class Notes program, which has two main components. The first is an online resources on a website for all music teachers in Minnesota, and the second is a live music performance component that is brought directly to our schools. The website, the Class Notes website, offers teaching videos, virtual concerts, and over 160 music standard-based lessons. These include and are made by local musicians. They include instrument demonstrations and techniques, music elements, composer history, composition, ensemble skills, and virtual concert opportunities. All of these are available online for the music teachers throughout the state. But just as I am here today to speak with you in person, it is my belief that there is no replacement for a live musical performance. The Class Notes live performances have impacted more than 1,200 students at my Oak Grove Elementary School alone. The musicians travel directly to our schools and provide these concerts free of charge in a small group setting. This eliminates the need for busing, which has been a very large financial and logistical barrier to schools and experiencing live performances. These local musicians are enthusiastic, and it's contagious to the students, and the concerts are age appropriate and just delightful. For the majority of my students, this is their only or first opportunity to attend a live music concert. They've prepared my students for choosing instruments of the band and orchestra and inspire them to sing in choirs. And these decisions impact them through high school and beyond. They also expose instruments to the students that I cannot personally have, such as a harpsichord and harps, and I'm grateful for that. 21% of my students at Oak Grove are second language learners, and Class Notes has helped me connect with them in a way that I couldn't do alone. They hear languages spoken in their home, and it's been a really wonderful experience. Tatambe had my entire school dancing and staff, along with African drumming. Siama from the Congo Republic took us on a magical journey to his homeland. Macedonia and Border Crossing brought instruments and music from South America, and the Rose Ensemble brought Arabic music and instruments. These students smiled and told me so proudly that they heard their native language, that they understood the song, and they saw an instrument that their family owned. But after every music concert, my students at Oak Grove proudly tell me they made a new friend. They call these musicians by name, and they feel really impacted. They make notes and thank you notes for these new friends. So on behalf of myself, my students at Oak Grove, and the music teachers and students in Minnesota, thank you for providing the exposure and the access to these concerts through NPR Class Notes. I am grateful for your time and this experience, to Representative Skraba for carrying the bill, and Representatives Hussain and Olson for being co-authors. I'd appreciate your support of the HF 1019 to provide increased legacy funding to the Minnesota Public Radio. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, for your testimony. And we'll go back to Director Anissa.
All right, moving on to our next service. The current is our Minnesota Public Radio's AAA alternative indie station, AAA being adult album alternative. And it's our station for amplifying emerging artists from across Minnesota. And actually, the current just celebrated their 20th anniversary, which was really exciting. The local show profiles Minnesota artists Audio and video sessions highlight artists in studio. Radio Heartland and Carbon Sound provide 24-hour-a-day stream of local tracks. We have performances at live events like the Minnesota State Fair and Grand Old Day. The Current also has happy hours around the state with various musicians playing. Minnesota Music Month is in April, so that's coming up. The gig list provides a daily guide for music happening around the state for local music fans. Increased funding for FY '26 and '27 will allow for multi-channel access on the local show, expanded live performances, and artist development, and strengthening the local artistic ecosystem. I have here just some comments, and I'm not going to go through them, but comments that various artists have made about the Current and how they help elevate them in Minnesota. Next, Minnesota Public Radio News, NPR News. Legacy funding with NPR News brings arts and culture to our programming. In FY '24, we had over 100 stories about Minnesota arts institutions, artists, and musicians. Stories on Minnesota heritage and history are shared regularly on programs like Minnesota Now, Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and NPR News with Angela Davis. Art Hounds profiled 129 artists, events, and shows in FY '24. 39% of those were from Greater Minnesota, covering 10 of the 11 regional arts council districts. North Star Journey is a program that NPR News has developed it's a program highlighting Minnesota history and culture. Over 30 pieces were featured in FY '24 on a wide range of topics, from the origin of the names of places in Minnesota to cultural foods, immigrant experiences, and how neighborhoods have evolved. NPR has a strong focus on how we can reach and serve new, younger, and more diverse audiences, as is reflected by the population of Minnesota. Carbon Sound is a streaming service that's dedicated to the depth, breadth, and influence of Black musical expression. Project DJ introduces young people to DJing and lets them share their musical selections. Radio Camp, in partnership with 360 Journalism, KRSM Radio, and McEasy, introduces students to the world of journalism. Increased funding in FY '26 and '27 would support expanded coverage in underserved and rural communities, increased multi-platform storytelling, reaching new audiences, recruiting new art hounds in Greater Minnesota, and integrating our native news into our North Star Journey program. We have an NPR archives dating back to our founding, which was in 1967. So this is going back 57 years of Minnesota history. It includes Minnesota newsmakers, politicians, authors, artists, musicians, inventors, athletes, and everyday people. NPR is in the process of going through thousands of hours of reels, preserving them digitally, and making them available on an online portal. We also have, as I've mentioned, a lot of live events, and some of NPR's live events include Rock the Cradle, which is an annual collaboration between NPR, the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, and the Children's Theater Company. It's an event for kids and their families to come together to explore music. Musical concerts and happy hours from the Current and Your Classical are put on around the state. Class Notes community concerts are an extension of the Class Notes program, where Class Notes artists are going out to places in Minnesota. They also take the opportunity to provide a free concert for the local community. We do a lot of tracking and measurement, and we do extensive budgeting, tracking, and have great accounting processes in place to make sure that we accurately track the legacy funding that we receive down to the penny. We measure also the impact of NPR's legacy-funded programs, and you can see some of the impact here on this slide. Thank you, Chairs McDonald and Vang, for the opportunity to present this morning. Thank you to this committee, and thank you to Representative Skraba for carrying our bill, and I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Members from the committee, we have Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will just start by talking about House File 1019 and the testimony that we've heard today. I think that nearly universally people appreciate what you're working to do in this bill. And I think that there's broad support for making sure that this kind of programming is available. That being said, I think also the public expects us to make sure that our public dollars are being used, to your point, watched, or I think you said managed down to the penny. And since there certainly is a lot of public information on nonprofits, today we thought we should ask a few questions relative to that as we're talking about increasing funding to Minnesota Public Radio. So I'd first preface my comments with some data, and that would be, if I'm reading your 990 correctly, I see what appears to be in 2022, I believe up to 16 different positions that are taking, or that are including, would be a better way to say it, over $300,000 in salary and benefits, and up to $575,000 in salary and benefits. And to just give members and the public some context, other positions in state government, for example, and this is all public data, so I'm not sharing anything untoward or inappropriate, but say, for example, Commissioner of Natural Resources, that's a $154,000 salary. A huge budget, tremendous responsibility. Commissioner of Education, that's even a little less, $150,000 in salary, and I think that also includes benefits. Minnesota Public Utility Commissioner is $140,000. And so that's a little bit concerning, and I'm not at all intending to disparage the proposal before the committee today, but since you had mentioned that you track dollars to the penny, I think generally most Minnesotans would say those salaries are probably out of alignment, and I could go through exactly the positions, but I don't think that's necessarily important. It's the question of value with so much private contributions, and here a bill before us today for an additional $2.3 million. So if you could just kind of help myself and other committee members and the public better understand why these salaries are as high as they are.
Sure.
Director Anissa?
Thank you, Representative Heitzman, for the question. I would say that you're right, the information is all public, information available on our 990. And I guess what I would say firstly is that none of the legacy funding goes towards any of the positions that you are seeing on the 990. They go towards making the programs that I talked about today possible. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, I would say that, yes, some of those salaries may seem high. They are competitive, however, with the local market, the local nonprofit market for the size of nonprofit that we are. And if you were to compare salaries with commercial radio stations and commercial media stations, I don't think that we would probably come close. So I do understand and respect the question and the point, and you know, just to help put it in perspective, I guess that is something that we review and take seriously.
Representative Heitzman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment and a follow-up question. So, Director, I think generally right now there's a lot of questions, you know, not just in Minnesota but around the country. Taxpayers, our constituents, want to have confidence that we're making investments in grant programs and projects and other such things that absolutely are of the highest and most significant impact. And this very well could be the absolutely appropriate way to invest legacy dollars. But I think that we want to know that those organizations that are receiving those dollars are doing as what you had previously stated, following that money to the last penny. And I think I'm not too far out of line to say that I don't know that many Minnesotans would agree that those salaries are competitive in that market. I think maybe they would say that that needs to be looked at. And if this isn't, if these dollars being discussed today impact those salaries or other expenses at Minnesota Public Radio at a net zero, you know, fine. But if you're able to generate so much revenue, which I think in this 990, I'm seeing $174 million in revenue for 2022, if I'm reading that correctly, and that's donations and other grants and such, I'm assuming. I guess my question would be, do you really need to come to the legacy for more taxpayer dollars?
We do have like 3 more bills left on the agenda, so if members and testifiers can keep their remarks concise. Director Anissa.
Thank you, Representative Heitzman. Yes, it's a point that I do take seriously and will take back to the station. And again, I just would say that we do research to see what the market dictates. So, and I guess I would just reiterate that none of the funding that we're talking about goes to those salaries. It goes to the programming that we're talking about, which reaches all Minnesotans. So it's really an investment in Minnesota.
All right, thank you. Representative Cha.
Thank you, Chair Vang, and thank you to my representative colleague across the aisle for those questions. Those are great questions. I have more of a comment because for many years, over 6 years, I was a public radio host, and I did that for many years. But during that time, I was also really involved in farming. And what I learned about public radio was the importance of radio in the farming communities and for laborers and farmers in rural areas, right? And so, because cell phone signals are spotty and stuff like that, so a lot of people relied on these FM, AM stations. And so that's really important too, because that's how they get their news, right? And when there's like an emergency service or something like that, that's how they get their news, right? On top of that, what I've learned about public radio in my years is that a lot of like underserved community and BIPOC communities utilize public radio for their information. And that's how they get authentic and transparent information. And so it is important to those communities. And so you know, I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Skraba and Vice Chair Hussein for bringing this bill. Mine's just mostly a compliment, kind of comments. I think the programming that you're doing is really good. I love, kind of like what I said about public TV, to start off, I mean, you're telling all these different stories, you know, on that page, page 15 or whatever it was, you know, 100-plus annual stories telling about other things that are going on in the arts and different things. You know, it's just making an effort to help us renew and then tell the, you know, connecting all these stories together. But I really enjoy that you're doing that, the class nights or class notes program. And that was just kind of unexpected that you're doing that. I mean, it just seems like it might be the Ordways of the world or, you know, the orchestra, Minnesota Orchestra, but that you've taken that on and bringing that world-class talent to all these schools. And when you look at the numbers of who it's going to, you know, it's many of our underserved communities are getting the programming and might not have the opportunity to go to see that, you know, in their local, you know, live to see it. And here they are, and they get to touch and hear. And there's something different when you have that instrument right by you. And so, you know, you just don't know if someone's going to take an interest in that and change their lives. So, and just, you know, like Rock the Garden, the same thing, some of the other program you're doing. So just generally comments, sorry, Madam Chair, and just want to thank you and for what you're doing and keep it up.
All right, and we have a final question from Co-Chair McDonald.
Great final question. Thank you, Representative Chair Vang. I think just to back up Representative Heinzman's comments, and it is a concern, certainly, and I appreciate that your comment that you'll bring this back to the board. And I think in all probably transparency, it would be good for NPR to disclose that, especially this committee, if not the rest of the state, that the good work that you do, you certainly don't want that to be hijacked by the fact of the high wages and the questions of where is that money coming from. I think Representative Heinzman brought up in the 990 report the other funding. So I think it would be important if you have that information today or quickly, just as to the donations and other grants that that all pays for the wages. And they are high. They're over $4 million for the folks. I counted 20 folks here on the I-90 or the 990 report. But I think that would be very good to the Minnesota taxpayers to know that the $4.7 million that you're getting on this bill, if it proceeds, is going to just your production. And all the other funding that pays very high salaries for some of these folks. And I'm not questioning their worth. They are high salaries. That people would know, hey, this is not coming from your tax dollars. It's not coming from everything you buy. It's other funding. Wherever that is for you to, I think, and maybe you have already, if you haven't, to be transparent and share with the Minnesotans.
Yeah, thank you, Chair McDonald. I would say that I know, just to give you an idea of where the funding comes from, 74% of funding comes from listeners and from private foundations and corporations and institutions making donations. So that is, by and large, the majority of the funding is that. We get, believe it, the 4.1 in the last biennium accounts for, I want to say 3% of our total budget. So It's a small amount, small amount when you look at our whole budget, in percentage terms, but it makes a very significant impact.
Okay. Director Anissa, please remember to go through the chair. Final remarks, Co-Chair McDonald? Okay, closing remarks.
Thank you, Chair Vang, Chair McDonald. It's small, but it's impactful, very impactful. I want to thank Director Rognes and Mrs. Hadley. I don't know how the kids say it. I was going to try to do that.
All of the above.
Yeah, I was going to
Music
try to do
teacher.
Mrs. Hadley, Mrs. Hadley.
All day.
Thank you for your dedication to teaching also. We know what a community looks like without arts and culture, and it's not a whole community. With your support and this funding, we will keep all our communities whole. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Skraba. And with that, House File 1019 is laid over. Next we have is House File 2321, Representative Frazier. If you and your testifiers can make your way to the table. And I will move that House File 2321 be laid over for possible inclusion. Whenever you're ready, Representative Frazier, please tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And co-chairs and committee members, thank you for having me here today. I've been before the committee before with this particular item that's in House File 2321. I am here today to request your support for House File 2321, which seeks $4.5 million in legacy funding for AMPERS and its stations. AMPERS is the Association of Minnesota Public Education Radio Station, which represents 17 independent community radio stations across the state. In my district alone, 4 stations, KMOJ, KFAI, Jazz 88, and Radio K, play a vital role in informing, educating, and entertaining our communities. Many of you heard me speak about AMPERS, as I have been a strong advocate for its mission. My experience as the former president of the nonprofit organization that oversees KMOJ provided me with firsthand insight into the critical role these stations play in serving their audiences. For this biennium, we are requesting a funding increase to support additional programming that will enhance the services these stations provide. I am joined today by AMPERS President and CEO Joel Glazer, who will share more details about AMPERS requests and how the funding will be utilized.
Thank you, Joel, for being here. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Joel Glazer. I am the President and CEO of AMPERS, the Association of Minnesota Public Educational Radio Stations. And as our esteemed author, Representative Frazier, mentioned, AMPERS is the Association of Minnesota Public Educational Radio Stations. We represent and support 17 different hyper-local community radio stations throughout the state of Minnesota. They are licensed either to a native tribe, a community itself, or a college, school, or university. Because we have some new members, I do want to point out that there is often confusion. We are not affiliated with, nor do we receive any funding from Minnesota Public Radio, Twin Cities Public Television, or the Minnesota Public Television Association. We are more the corner drugstore, the corner hardware store, where everybody knows your name. 13 of our 17 stations are in greater Minnesota. Just running through a couple of the highlights from our FY23, FY24, focusing more on the FY24 projects. In FY24, we paid more than 800 Minnesota artists for their work. Referencing Co-Chair McDonald's question earlier, we employed more than 125 contractors. All of those contractors are within the state of Minnesota. Those contractors were used to create radio programs and podcasts. The money helped to support more than 17 FTEs. Those two are all in the state of Minnesota. Those are spread out throughout our 17 stations. We produced nearly 1,300 radio segments in FY24. And to date, since 2009, when we first received legacy funding, we have produced nearly 30,000 radio segments, which are available now and for future generations. One of the things that I would like to point out is that these radio programs have 2 services, actually. They serve listeners online, but many teachers use them as well. I used to incorrectly say that we were double dipping. I have changed that to say it's a buy one, get one free. So double dipping could get me in a little trouble. I can give Chair Nash and state government credit for pointing out that I should change my terminology there. We use it on air, but many of the classrooms, teachers across Minnesota mentioned that they use our radio segments for conversation starters, our shorter segments. They may assign our longer segments as podcast homework, and the students can actually take those segments, edit them down, and use them in a presentation in a classroom. Back when I was in school, that would have taken hours. They can whip out their phone and do that very quickly. We're also working with the Minnesota Military Museum, and all of the content that we are creating, not only the content, but the raw audio itself, as we are interviewing veterans, which is a big part of what we do, all of that is being archived and being provided to the Minnesota Military Museum. I'd also like to draw attention to the fact that we win a lot of statewide and regional awards for our legacy work. In FY24, Ampers and its member stations received 8, which you will see up on your screen there. We received 8 awards that were statewide or regional, the Society of Professional Journalists, the Midwest Broadcast Journalists. And since our work started in 2009, we have received 108 awards, statewide and regional, all of which was funded by the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. There are additional awards, but those are just projects that were funded by Legacy. Rather than my taking your time, since we are in radio, I'm going to give you, if the technology works here, a brief audio example. If it doesn't, I have a backup, but we're going to go ahead and take a listen.
This is Purple Legacy, behind the scenes of Purple Rain.
This is Veterans Voices, The Secret War, a series sharing stories of the Hmong who served on behalf of the U.S. during the Vietnam War. This episode features Vang.
I entered the war when I was 14 years old.
One thing that surprised me was all of the reasons the veterans gave for joining the military. Everything from student loans, travel, to being drafted.
This is Minnesota Native News. I'm Marie Rock. This week, we hear about how the box office hit Star Wars: A New Hope returns to the big screen in one of Minnesota's indigenous languages. Deanna Standing Cloud brings us the story.
Nowhere else is there such a historic love for Kolachki than at the Kolachki Days in Montgomery, Minnesota.
MN90 is produced by Ampers, diverse radio for Minnesota's communities. Made possible by funding from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Online at mn90.org.
Madam Chair, members, representing 17 stations becomes really challenging in trying to explain everything that we do, because each of those stations, they are all unique stations programmed by and for their local community. We are not taking a signal from the Twin Cities and spreading it out statewide. So it becomes very challenging to try and encompass to you and present to you the breadth and gravity of what it is that we do. But that gives you a very quick kind of idea of just how broad. All of those actually happen to be programs that Ampers itself produced. I was not familiar with the Kolachki until we did MN90 Minnesota History in 90 seconds. And I actually, in my position, one of the neat things about doing my position is I learn a lot as well. One of the other things that we heard early on and continuing through our time receiving legacy funds is that taxpayers want to know, how are those funds being spent? One of our first projects in 2009 was a look at legacy, and we brought that project back with us. We renamed it Minnesota's Legacy rather than a look at legacy. And the purpose of the project is to give listeners an understanding of how are Minnesota's clean water, land, and legacy funds, how are they being spent? Let's showcase the organization itself. What does that organization do? What are they receiving? And what do they do with those funds? And how are Minnesotans benefiting from that? And here's a very quick example of one of those.
This is Minnesota's Legacy, a look at the organizations and the people who have benefited from Minnesota's Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment.
Imagine
a church sanctuary, wooden pews filled to capacity, as a symphony of voices fills the air.
They really just surrounded the audience in sound, which was pretty remarkable.
That's Joe Osowski, Executive Director of the St. Michael Albertville Music Boosters Club, STMA for short. He's describing his music program's concert performance, led by Grammy-nominated British vocal ensemble Voces 8.
They're one of the best vocal ensembles in the world.
The Music Boosters program provides diverse and rich musical education experiences for STMA choir students.
I want my kids to get world-class experiences. But we open this up to all students, not just students at St. Michael Albertville.
Members of Voces 8 taught a masterclass for students and a rehearsal. Support from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund helped to make this unique opportunity possible.
Education is at the heart of their mission, and that, for me as a teacher, that's the win, right?
The day ended in a concert performance with both students and members of Voces 8.
I've had students come up to me after our concerts and say, now this is the reason I'm going into music.
Find more information at stmachoirs.org.
Minnesota's Legacy is produced by Ampers with support from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Online at ampers.org.
Madam Chair, members, we are asking for $4.5 million for the 26-27 biennium. When you take a look at that on a per station basis, that's about $16,000 per station per year, which would allow each of them to do an additional project or two in the next biennium that they have been hoping to do. We benefited from some carryover in the previous biennium because of the pandemic. And so last year, we actually did not ask for an increase. We are asking for an increase because the stations have spent that down and are sitting on projects that they would like to do. Madam Chair, members, I would ask that you please support our House File 2321, and I am available should you have any questions.
Thank you, President Joe. Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Representative Frazier, for bringing the bill. I will mention for the record that I also checked Ampers 990 and found it to be much more in line with, I think, what the public expects. Thank you.
All right, Representative Cha.
You know, when Ampers came to me and you brought to me the Secret War programming that you did, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate your grassroots approach, and I concur with Representative Heisman on the other side of the aisle here in regards to his remarks. Going back to the public program that you did was very grassroots about the Secret War of Laos. I want to thank you for that piece because I want people to understand that 100% of Hmong Americans in Minnesota or in the United States of America are here directly because of that secret war in Laos. And so when you do programming on that, you're touching on 100% of the Hmong heritage and all Hmong Minnesotans in the state of Minnesota. So thank you and appreciate that.
All right, and Representative Holder Hitsley.
Thank you so much, Chair Vang. And then also I want to acknowledge Ampers for the work that you guys are doing. And going off of my colleague here, Representative Cha, I was actually a part of one of the programs that you run. And it was basically just creating a space for diverse voices. And I got to tell my story. And so I really appreciate the work that you guys do. And I'm excited to support this bill. Thank you.
And then we have Co-Chair McDonald.
Thank you, Co-Chair Vang. Just a comment, Mr. Glazer, you and I met 10, 12, 15, a long time ago anyway. And you shared with me the Ampers and some of your programs that you did there. So I've been a fan ever since and certainly support this, your work. And just wanted to made a comment, not a question, but I just want to acknowledge that publicly. That we've been longtime friends, and he's enlightened me on the importance of Ampers and what they do for probably 12 years out of my 15 that I've been here, unfortunately. So keep up the good work, and Representative Frazier, good to see you in committee that you're bringing this great bill. We'll see what kind of money we have at the end of the month here.
And then Representative Lillie, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Chair Vang and Representative Frederick. Thank you for bringing this. I just want to, again, thank your folks for, I think the Minnesota Legacy part is going to help us when we go to renew. You're telling the story of so many different, the funds, what they're doing. I think that's, it's kind of the same speech I'm giving to these last three, and but you're actually doing it. All three of you are doing it, and I really want to thank you for doing that. And it's funny that you did a piece on Kolachki Days. One of the things I like to do is go to county fairs and outstate festivals, and if you ever get a chance to go to Montgomery, it's actually a blast. But anyways, that was just funny. But yeah, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you, Representative Frederick.
All right, seeing no further discussion, closing remarks, Representative Frazier?
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Co-Chair and committee members for the comments. AMPERS does great work. Their work has been known to be great over the years. And I think these organizations, they vitally need, they're critical parts of their communities. Not only do they provide news and entertainment, but they also provide young and folks that may be looking for a second opportunity to do something differently, an opportunity to get into radio and broadcasting. So I think we may want to make sure we keep this opportunity alive. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you. And with that, House File 2321 is laid over for possible inclusion. Next we have is House File 1740, Representative Nadeau. If you and your testifiers can make your way to the table. And I will move that House File 1740 be laid over. I believe we also have an author's amendment, the A1. And then I think it seems like it's a technical amendment, correct, Representative Nadeau?
That's correct.
Okay. Co-Chair McDonald, would you like to move to the A1 to get in the shape of the author you would like it to be?
Madam Chair, yes, I'll move the technical amendment for 7.5, fiscal year 2027. So I'll move that 1740, A1 amendment.
All right, any discussion to the A1? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say nay. The amendment is adopted. So to your bill, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Chair Vang and Chair McDonald and members. It's the first time in my that I'm in your committee, so it's been interesting. So thank you. There's something about treats. I don't know. McDonald will take care of it. But I'm going to be really quick, and I've got some testifiers here that are going to talk about some important things. Community television, that's what this bill is about. It's so important for promoting local voices, and it plays an incredibly significant role in fostering civic engagement. It stands pretty much alone in the state, providing a broad and long-lasting platform for diverse perspectives that emphasize freedom of expression, community involvement, and content production, especially for people that lack mainstream media. Currently, these stations, there's about 140 of them, and the largest 20 serve 2.8 million people. They're primarily funded through franchise fees on cable, which have been steadily declining as people access TV programming in different ways. House File 1740 provides an incredibly important statewide stopgap measure for community television stations while we work to find a more long-term solution, and it appropriates $7.5 million per year from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Funds for grants for community TV stations across Minnesota. And at this point, I want to turn it over to my two testifiers to answer all the specific questions.
All right, I believe we have Shannon Slatton Schwartz, Executive Director from CCX Media. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Hello, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Shannon Slatton Schwartz. I'm the Executive Director of the Northwest Suburbs Cable Communication Commission and CCX Media. We cover the 9 suburbs north of 394 and west of Highway 100. Today, I am also honored to represent MACTA, an organization of PEG stations from all around the state. PEG stands for Public, Educational, and Governmental Programming that is operated by cities and organizations like mine all around the state. Community cable television is different from public television in that we are hyper-local. We fill a growing news desert and we promote government transparency at its most local level. We do a lot of city council meetings. As CCX Media, our staffs, disseminates, and broadcasts more than 365 city meetings each year. And we know we get more than 54,000 views on that meeting those meetings, and that number is going up because just a few years ago, it was at 30,000. People are caring about that government transparency. That shows through with the local stories that we do as well. A good example of that happened back in 2021, covering the aftermath of the tragic police shooting of Dante Wright in Brooklyn Center. Every media outlet and their brother came to town to show Brooklyn Center in its worst moments. But no one was there covering what was going on in the City Hall for the residents. We got this email from a viewer that read, CCX's coverage of the emergency council meetings is extremely valuable. It is providing context and giving me a more complete picture of what's going on. If you look back over that time period, the top viewed stories on our website were stories about city staffing, city services, and mutual aid from neighboring suburbs. People wanted to know what was going on in City Hall, and they looked to us to provide that information. But we do more than just the serious stuff. Community television also provides that slice of life that you have come to know. What's going on at your local historical society, at the VFW or the American Legion? Who's got an art show going on up at the community center? Who's running for city council, school board, and of course those parades and community festivals as well. For 45 years, community television has been funded by cable franchise fees and PEG fees. As each person moves away from cable television, traditional cable television, to streaming, our revenue is impacted. At CCX Media alone, we have lost 35% of our revenue since 2017. If you look at stations around the state, that varies from 13% to 43%. That means we are making some very hard choices as we look at our budget. Do we cut back on the number of high school games that we broadcast, or do we cut back on the parades and festivals? Do we cut back on city council meetings, or do we cut back on those voter forums that are so important? Do we sacrifice the quality of our Emmy award-winning work, or do we cut back on the quantity and not maybe covering every community that we have so far? Very hard choices and very hard decisions, which is why we are before you today, asking for a stopgap funding measure so we can continue to work on modernizing our funding model and greater sustainability while we continue to deliver the news and government meetings and the information that our communities have come to expect from organizations like ours. That is more of a metro suburban perspective. My colleague and friend Jackson is going to share more from elsewhere in the state.
Thank you, Chair Vang, Chair McDonald, members of this committee. I'm here to provide a perspective from the greater Minnesota side of things. My name is Jackson Grosskreitz. I live in Buffalo and work with the Sherburne-Wright Cable Commission, which is comprised of 10 cities, ranging from Dassel with a population of just 1,500 to Elk River with a population of over 26,000. SWTV has provided community television for more than 40 years. Our community impact can be seen through coverage of city meetings, parades, coronations, concerts, and local candidate forums within our 10 cities. Just this past weekend, we filmed the Maple Lake St. Patrick's Day Parade, and we were happy to see Chair McDonald marching around with the McBrady and McDonald clan. As social media has become more relevant, we've continued to modernize our reach by creating more short-form video content to complement our long-form content. This strategy allows us to keep all age groups informed and promote events to the estimated 92,000 residents within our commission area. In 2026, Delano is preparing to celebrate its 150th anniversary, along with the 250th founding of our nation. We have started production of a documentary with the Delano Historical Society, which will be used to help promote the city and its historic 4th of July celebration. This past summer, we created a video promoting the Big Lake Farmers Market, which saw over 16,000 views on Facebook alone. And I will add that Big Lake's population is only around 14,500, I believe. So obviously people from outside the city were seeing it too. SWTV is also committed to innovative technology used by government through the purchase and installation of video equipment in police stations, fire stations, and city halls. Working jointly with our local law enforcement and school districts, we created an annual public service announcement aimed at reducing drunk driving before prom. Last year, that video inspired a parent to email us, and I'd like to share a portion of what she wrote. I lost my son, Eric Anderson, in 2005, coming back from Votech to Delano High School. He was the passenger, and his friend was driving 90 miles an hour, racing their friends back to school. These kids often think it won't happen to them, but sadly, it can.
Any awareness helps them think twice, and even if one student chooses to drive more safely, countless lives are changed. Great job on the video, and thank you from a mother who knows how devastating this is. Our commission has relied on these franchise fees paid through the use of the public right-of-way. Beyond funding, our franchise agreement has helped ensure the build-out of cable infrastructure in our 10 cities. This is especially critical in our smaller and more rural communities, which benefits from internet access through those same cable lines. Unfortunately, internet and broadband is not franchised like cable, which threatens our funding as residents cut cable in favor of streaming services. The funding provided by the Legacy Fund will help sustain many smaller stations like SWTV, while a more sustainable funding solution is implemented. This is critical for providing government transparency and accountability via coverage of city meetings at a time when residents increasingly rely on our hyper-local broadcasts. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you so much, Chair Vang. Just a quick statement on strong support for House File 1740. As a beneficiary of CCX, specifically media, obviously I stand strong in support of this bill, recognizing its vital role in preserving and expanding community media access in Minnesota. From covering my high school, because I went to Cooper High School, covering my high school track meet to basketball meets to when I won Miss Africa Minnesota, you guys came over and did a story on that and the work that I was doing in the community, to again, as you referenced, Shannon, the coverage on Dante Wright. I lived in Brooklyn Center during that time, and as a community leader there, you know, CCX was very instrumental in really voicing the community voices and making sure that the community voices was out there. And, you know, just working now as a legislator and doing my candidate forum and candidate profile. So I just want to basically say that, you know, CCX team, you know, has made a very intentional, you know, steps in making sure that community voices are being told, issues are being covered, and all of the voices are being heard. And so I'm in support of local media, and it is more important than just news source, right? It is a bridge that connects all of us, informs us, and empowers us. So House File for 1740 provides a much needed, you know, reliable news and information. But we must also push, like you talked about, long-term sustainable funding solutions to keep community media thriving. And I also want to note, I was actually at the studio yesterday with a young lady from the Kenyan community who was doing a story on my journey to the legislator. And she shared about her experience. She came there for a tour, and she was like, I'm interested in journalism. And honestly, your team took her on and provided that space for free, and she started creating, you know, and being innovative. And right now, she shared how she had won a scholarship to go to LA and pursue journalism. And it's because of the work that she did through CCX and the team over there. And then I realized that you guys have free, like, you have like, a free resource. You know, folks from the community can come in and do stories and use your podcast resources for free. So what am I trying to say? This is an amazing opportunity for us as a legislator to continue to support the community work that you are doing in expanding the voices of the community, not only in the Midwest suburbs, but across the entire state of Minnesota. So thank you so much. And thank you to my colleague, Representative Nadeau, for bringing this up and for supporting this bill. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Representative. It sounds like you're quite connected, and as you were talking, I was thinking, you know, like maybe one of your taglines, and you came out right away in the beginning, we aren't NPR, you know, and one of the other tags is we don't have NPR salaries, but we'd like to use those salaries. I believe you are in Ely, Minnesota, and I know when we have our community TV, when we have hiccups and it's not on, you know. And when I was mayor of Ely, you knew immediately. And it's something that I think a lot of people confuse. They think it is public TV, whatever it is, and they forget that it's not. And I'm just trying to figure out, it is a challenge. I reach out, I mean, I wouldn't mind coming in and trying to figure out how to raise more money for you, because this really is where the rubber hits the road. This is people, and it's instant. It's, it's like, the other programming, NPR tries to do this, but they're at like another 1,000-foot level. They're up there, and they do a good job of it. But this is everyday, real, and there's not enough funding for it, so we have to figure out how to help it to maybe get in that same lane, because obviously people support NPR and the public TV because they like it. And your content is as good, if not better. So how do we get those folks to share some of that? So keep up the good work, and I support your cause. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then we have Co-Chair McDonald.
Thank you, Co-Chair Vang. My father, the late great K.J. McDonald, who served here for 14 years, always said that the best form of government is that which is closest to the people. So too is the work that you all do. You're promoting and educating folks in our districts. Mr. Grosskreitz is from Delano, and I've been photographing him since he was, I think, his first communion photos. So it's good to see you here, and I know the great work you do, certainly in the parades, but also the many debates that we had, the forums that when we ran for city council and mayor and school boards and state reps, that you promote that. And it is the closest to the people, and this should be funded some way, some form. Representative Nadeau, thank you for bringing this. I appreciate it. I asked my amazing LA, Karina Nelson, behind me, if I had signed on, and she said I hadn't. So she signed me on right away. So I will be a co-author. It is a lot of money. Money is a little scarce this year. We have a lot of requests, but we have to find a sustainable funding for this. So Representative Nadeau and the rest of us who are here, I would propose that we look into franchise fees. I'm a fiscal conservative, but we're already been paying them. I've been paying franchise fees on my cable bill for I don't know how long, could be decades. Well, not decades, maybe a decade or two, 2 decades. But we have to find a mechanism. I don't think that we want them coming back here every year, coming to the legacy, depending on this money, because it's all subjective and it's not sustainable or reliable. But the work that you're doing is very important. We all know that. Same with the local radio stations. So we as a body have to find legislation to next year. I hope that this year we can put some in and stop the bleeding. Ms. Schwartz, we all met just last week in my office. So hopefully we can help stop the bleeding and keep you sustainable until hopefully next session we can find a way to put into statutes that cities can collect a franchise fee, which we're already doing for cable. But people are cutting the cable, and that going through broadband, that funding goes towards our local organizations such as yours. So I guess that's all I have to say at this point. Maybe if you had a comment, I know Representative Vang has her bill yet, so we have to move on to that. But I think we need to support this somewhat at this point. I'm not sure what funding we can have, Representative Vang, but we can certainly as a team, we'll look and see what we can have to sustain this. And I'll just say the first name, Bill, my friend over here with Sherburne Wright Cable, also has been very good with me on the camera. So I appreciate the work that you do and your friendship with my father, as you had from Watertown. So if there's any other comments regarding that, Representative Nadeau, we do have to find sustainable funding for this.
Director Shannon or Representative Nadeau, would you like to respond quickly?
And quickly, and thank you, Representative McDonald. And that's what we're going to work on, and that's what this bill is about. This is some transitionary funding that's going to give us time to actually find a sustainable funding source for these important plans. Should I close?
Yes.
Yes,
proceed.
and thank you again. We've all of us here have had the experience, the impact, and understand the impact of these hyper local TV stations. They provide more engagement. They provide more information, and most importantly, is that community television provides additional education. And that's the difference. And so thank you for letting us come and appear before the committee, and we hope you look hard at finding ways to find us some stopgap funding. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. And with that, I will move that House File 1740 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you. And then next, we have House File 2278. And so Vice Chair Hussein and I will switch gavels.
Chair Vang moved House File 2278 be laid over. Chair Vang has an amendment, A1. Would you like to move your A1?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I do have the A1 amendment. This is just to make sure that it's in the shape that I would like the bill to be. And I will ask the committee for their support.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion in the A1 amendment? As seen none, all those favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Thank you, Chair Vang. Explain your bill.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Bear with me as I present this last bill here. As we heard today from many media groups that we fund through the Legacy Amendment, I'm proud to present a significant media stakeholder that should receive legacy funding. They provide similar but necessary content for communities who rely on especially language access to understand and know what is happening in mainstream or local news. Ethnic media provides critical information and translation and covers stories that impact the most within the community they serve, whether that's highlighting local community achievements to issues directly impacting the community. With me here today is 3 Hmong TV. The Hmong way is Bay Hmong TV, but the Americanized version is 3 Hmong TV. It's one of the few well-known providers for the Hmong community. They invite government entities, provide updates, and show up to community events that educate and highlight current events, like the Hmong New Year, that is featured in as one of St. Paul's biggest attraction and featured on Visit St. Paul. And most importantly, they provide that language access that most traditional media outlets with similar content cannot provide. And so this funding is limited to those who give public access and education or governmental programming, primarily in multilingual content. And with that, I'll have my testifier, Yang Yi Lor, here today from Bay Hmong TV, who can share in detail the work that they already do in the community.
Go ahead, identify yourself and.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Yang Yi Lor, and I'm the host of Uncover More Good on Bay Hmong TV. I'm here today to share the critical role of ethnic media. Oh, was that supposed to be what I was supposed to do? Yeah, okay, keep
Go
going.
ahead.
So I started
Got
doing
it.
my speech. And why funding platforms like Bay Hmong TV are essential to ensuring communities of color have access to news and resources they need to thrive. For over 2 decades, Bay Hmong TV have been serving the Hmong and Southeast Asian community, not just as a media outlet, but as a trusted source of news, information, and cultural storytelling. We provide coverage that is culturally relevant, language accessible, and community-driven. Today, over 190,000 people follow our work, and our engagement rates exceed 60%, demonstrating how deeply our content resonates with people we serve. Every month, we generate 198,500 views, totaling over 2 million views annually, with over 19,500 monthly viewing hours, proving that this is a strong demand for news that reflect our community's experiences. But the reality is we do much of this work for free. There's 8 hosts. I'm one of the hosts, and we do this all because we care and love our community and want our community to get the news and information that they need coming from trusted sources. We have been serving our community. We do this work because it matters, because our elders, many of whom do not speak English fluently, need to understand policy changes, healthcare access, and civic engagement opportunities. Because our youth need to see themselves reflected in media to feel that their voices, struggles, and successes are seen and valued. Unfortunately, ethnic media remains severely underfunded despite the critical role it plays in bridging information. According to the Press Forward Minnesota Media Landscape Report, mainstream media has historically neglected diverse communities, leading 68% of BIPOC audiences to rely on social media for news rather than traditional outlets. This is not because they don't care about staying informed. It is because mainstream media isn't meeting their needs. Furthermore, 87% of BIPOC-led media entrepreneurs report that funding decisions are inequitable, and only 21% receive enough funding to sustain operations. This is the reality we face. Without investment in ethnic media, we risk entire communities disconnected from essential news, civic engagement, and economic opportunities. But when ethnic media is supported, communities are empowered. Research shows that when people have access to information, their language, civic participation increases, health outcomes improve, and cultural identity strengthens. Media is not just a storytelling tool, it's a tool for empowerment. And when communities are empowered, they thrive. And when they thrive, we all thrive. So I urge this committee to invest in the future of ethnic media, such as Baimhong TV. We are directly in the community, understand our community, and deserve an ecosystem that represents them, informs them, and elevates their voices. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Chair Vang, thanks for bringing this bill forward. I understand, I just want to make a comment that my dad, my aunt, and many elders are relying on this kind of TV because we do have a Somali public TV, and in order for them to kind of understand what's going on in the planet, this is how they get their story. The bills that we pass, the work that we're doing in the state level, the budget and everything, they rely on the public TVs, and they understand. So it is a very important. Is there any discussion on this bill? Representative Cha.
Thank you, Chair Singh. Thank you to Representative Sam, Chair Vang, to bring this bill forward. I just have a couple of comments, and I want to kind of lay this out. Is that although Baimhong TV is locally in the state of Minnesota, that it reaches all the way to as far as Laos and Thailand. That it reaches as far as China, and it reaches far beyond just the borders of the United States of America. As Hmong Americans in the state of Minnesota, we are at the center and pinnacle of the Hmong community throughout the world. And it shows and reflects in the 9 state legislatures that we have here in the state of Minnesota. And that's the importance of funding such channels like this. I also want to emphasize that we must continue to look for the stations that are transparent, that are really doing the work in community. Because with fake media, digital media, and AI technologies, there are a lot of these social media, fake news, and just information that's not accurate that's being put out there. And so when we talk about a station like Baimhong TV, I will vouch that they do really do a good job. But that's not without saying that if you do receive funding from this committee and public fundings, that I urge you to get additional training for journalism and ethics, and so that we can continue to move forward in a transparency space that will do justice for just not the station, but for the Hmong Americans. Thank you.
Any comment? All right, Representative Smamali Hasley.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you so much, Chair Vang, for bringing this bill to our attention. Coming from a community that values culture and language. I speak 3 languages, and so I truly appreciate the spirit of this bill because a lot of times in certain diverse communities, language is key to connecting and to passing information and to communicating to those communities, especially the elderly, right? And so I am curious to know, again, being a new member here. Is this the first time this is being appropriated?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, that is correct, Representative Mani Hidsley. It's the first time that I believe Ethnic Media or Baymong TV specifically has come to ask for funding.
Thank you so much for that. And so if this is going to the Board of Directors of Minnesota Humanities Center as a grant program, I take it going back to my colleague here, Representative Cha, other ethnic communities who would want to participate in partaking of this grant, they would go through the grant process, correct?
Representative Vang.
Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay, I appreciate that so much because I definitely do know a lot of other ethnic groups that are doing amazing work out here, but because they don't have visibility, they might not even know that this grant exists, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, and Chair Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Chair Vang, thank you for bringing us forward. I'm excited to see this new development that you're bringing forward, and I think it's actually really exciting. I just had to chuckle. I was honored enough to be invited to a Hmong New Year. I often try to go to many of them, but this year I was invited to one, and Chair Vang is actually a true viewer of your of the product, because she sent a picture of me at the Hmong New Year as she's watching at her home, I believe, on TV, and I was doing their traditional socializing or dating event or whatever the ball toss, and but anyways, I thought that she's actually a true believer in your product and using it, and so yeah, thank you for.
Chair Vang.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Lillie. Yeah, even as an elected official, I think it's really important that we also rely on, I value the local news, local station as being the eyes and ears of our community. And so as an elected official, it is very helpful to see what's going on, and also perhaps to spy on Representative Lillie and see what he's doing within my community too. So.
Is there any other comments or any opposed to bill or closing comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the committee for their time, and I appreciate, moving forward and the future support of this appropriation. Thank you.
The bill is laid over, and with that, we adjourn.